So just yesterday, we discussed the argument in favor of hyper-curation. This would be hyper-curating your art, literally curating away as many elements as humanly possible, making your creation as refined as you can possibly fathom to. Now, coming today, I want to discuss the argument against hyper-curation. What is the argument for just not curating at all? Like, literally doing nothing, just going full, doing your thing and stepping away and never returning to the piece, right? Remember in school when the teacher would be like, what you're gonna do is you're gonna finish your essay, then you're gonna read it over and fix any mistakes, right? If curation is fixing those mistakes, hyper-curation, or rather the lack of hyper-curation, not hyper-curation, scratch that. To not curate would be to finish your essay in school and hand it right to the teacher. Now, that's what most of us did. Let's be honest, guys, level with me. I know you did that too. I never once read over an essay. That's just, who's got time for reading over essays when you could be going on your phone or reading a book instead? It's not a good idea to read your essays over, folks. But I think that's an interesting metaphor. I think that's an interesting jumping off point, namely because it kind of has a lot to do with this, right? If hyper-curation, right? The favor of hyper-curation is very similar to the reason of why your teacher tells you to check over your essay at the end. It's to make a better essay. I mean, as simply as humanly possible. Hyper-curation is to make better art, to make this individual piece better. And I think this is an interesting place to start, right? Because the way we argue in favor of not curating at all is like very different than arguing in favor of curation. Arguing for curation is to make a better piece of art. Arguing against curation kind of has a strange tinge of like common good altruism to it, right? And stay with me here, because I know that sounds weird. But I would pose the argument that to not curate, to go into a piece and just not curate at all, and to just do what comes to you and then, walk away. I would make the argument that this is better for overall, I mean, it's a hefty term to use. I don't take any pride in it, but for culture, I do think that not curating is a better thing to do for culture as a whole. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but I genuinely do think this is how it works. I think that the argument for curation is great. It's a good argument. Listen, curation is a good tool for making good art. But when we come to the argument against curation, it's more so this altruistic common good, dare I say, kind of like a I hate using this term, like a dialectic argument, right? I hate using that term because it's like the prime buzzword that people use to be like, look, this is a smart point and you should listen, right? I hate the word dialectic. It makes like half sense and like it's not, listen, most people when they're using it are just throwing it out there. But I do think that if you believe culture is an ever-evolving, moving thing, which is what a dialectic is, right? I'm not going to use the word dialectic ever again because I'd die by the end of this, right? I'm not going to use the word dialectic anymore, right? Culture, dialectic just means a big, moving, constantly changing thing, right? If you believe that's what culture is, then not curating your art might be the best thing that you can do, right? Now, this all comes down to not how you as an artist operate, but rather how much of the art world does, right? And I mean, this might also be how you operate, but largely this is just how people operate when it comes time to create art. Oftentimes, what people are doing when they create art is not going in to try and find the best thing, right? I mean, like, I can't say this for a fact. This is there's no statistics to back up this claim. But I'd go as far as saying, I don't think anybody watched The Godfather and was like, man, I'm going to do this but more interesting. I'm going to do this but better. I'm going to do this with a twist. Maybe they found other things in The Godfather that later inspired something. But the reason I'm using this movie is because it's amazing. It's because it's so good, right? It's a finished product. And it's so good, in fact, that I would go as far as saying that, well, it might have inspired people in the colloquial sense. I don't think it led to great art being made because it's almost like a final version of itself, right? This is not a steadfast rule, right? Like nothing we ever discuss on the show is. You guys are very familiar with that by now. This is not a steadfast rule. And listen, there are probably many people that found The Godfather and ended up doing interesting things with that premise. However, I would go as far as saying that 90% of art created goes back into this big pool that ends up getting used by other artists to make more art. I'm going to even go as far as saying this. I'm going to call 1% of art created by all people finished. No, let's not call that. That's not a good enough word. We'll call it masterpiece art, right? And masterpiece art isn't just referring to The Godfather. It's also referring to Avengers Endgame. It's referring to Avatar. It's referring to Thriller, right? These things are important. These things inspire things. However, 99% of the consumption of Endgame or The Godfather is just by somebody going to the theater, right? It's by somebody sitting down to watch a great movie, a fantastic film, having a great time and leaving. Obviously, yes, those two are very fantastic films in different ways. They're great viewing experiences in different ways, but you get what I'm kind of leading at here, right? These movies are made primarily for consumption. And consumed they are. I mean, you know, two huge films. I would go as far as saying the other 99% of art that gets seen far less, right? Far less. And I know these numbers are gonna seem crazy at first, but I do think, like, genuinely it makes sense if you think about it, because of how much art is made on a daily basis, right? This other 99% of art is viewed less, and it's viewed by people who are using it as inspiration, taking inspiration for great art. I would, you know, anecdotally talk about here how movie directors talk about their favorite movies. If you ever watch like a really great movie director, you know, Francis Ford Coppola, Kubrick, Kurosawa, Wes Anderson, if you ever hear these people talk about like their favorite movies ever made, they're never gonna mention to you the big movies. I mean, maybe once or twice they'll be like, I saw this and it was informative to me as a child. But oftentimes their favorite movies are sort of these old, niche, kind of, dare I say, half-baked. I mean, that's at least my perception of it when I've gone back to try and view some of these movies, right? They definitely do feel half-baked. They feel as though it is a crumb of an idea that can be used in a great way. But this is the exact point here, right? What a director does a lot of the time is not so much just make an idea out of thin air. They watch these things and go, wow, that was brilliant in this way, in a way that nobody else sees. And they create another piece of art that's amazing off of it, right? This is kind of, I mean, maybe not exactly what Picasso meant with his quote, but I mean, you could interpret this as being a delineation of great artists' style, right? Great artists take an idea and they improve upon it. They go, I see something that nobody else yet has, and I'm going to turn it into something else, right? This can be super direct through the idea of a remake, or it can be less direct through just influence that happens to us on a daily basis. That's what I think 99% of art is. Could you like break that out maybe into like tiers or something? Like, is there, you know, there's the tier of like the massive millions of things on DeviantArt that like a very select group of people are seeing, that's getting like one view, and that's still very much inspiring and moving how culture works. Like I think that this mass that we all understand as culture is still heavily influenced by these things, especially in the modern day where, like, you know, things aren't as big as they used to be, you know, like we don't have a Beatles nowadays. There's no semblance of monoculture like we once had, right? So in this way, I would go as far as saying that more than ever, culture is influenced by just like people posting random things. This could be memes, for an example, right? I would then say that above that tier is maybe the things that are not just in that giant drove, but more select that are being watched by, you know, auteurs or whatever, yada, yada, yada. I'm not interested in breaking that out into tiers because I think it just kind of makes this whole thing less fun. Is that fair? I think that's a fair thing to say. I think it just makes it a lot less fun to discuss this if you try and break this out into tiers, right? I think this is best discussed simply just as there is the art that is predominantly just consumed and enjoyed by masses of people, and then there's the art that goes back into culture and kind of, you know, not revitalized, it just feeds into it. It feeds into the giant machine that is culture nowadays, right? I would also go as far as back in the day, right? Because nowadays, this is a new thing. My argument that's being made here could only like work if you agree with it. It could only work for the last, man, I'd go as far as saying the last 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 10. Before that though, I think that this also exists in another form, right? Movements, right? There were artistic movements, and when a movement was being made, let's take pop art for an example, there were a lot of pop artists that were very popular in New York City at the time. Andy Warhol was the pioneer of pop art though. You know, I mean, there were names right behind him. There was the Roy Lichtenstein. There were all these great people doing their thing. Keith Haring, I mean, I personally would kind of put him in a different category that came later, just because of the substance of his work and how he did it. I do think he was more of a graffiti artist, but many put him in the pop art category just because he has that fun art, right? But even him included. Next to those three people, the people that you see on the Uniqlo shirts now, there are a million pop artists that were doing the same thing, right? And that's what makes pop art a movement. It's a very false interpretation of history that we just had, like, one guy come along and go, I am inventing a new brilliant thing. Picasso didn't invent Cubism. You know, all these things have droves and droves of you know, other influences, and a million people making the same art in the background. That's the important part, right? That's what makes it a movement. Nowadays, I think the equivalent of this is just watching how culture ebbs and flows in its entirety. Whatever amorphous vibe that you gather from that, I would argue that 99% comes from all this art that is getting viewed less. All of these artists you cannot name. I think that is how our modern culture moves if we were to view it in the lens of a movement, right? I think that's an argument for not curating, because I think when you don't curate, you know, when you try not to produce something that is going to be viewed by a mass of people, but rather you go and you just produce something that you think is interesting, and then it hits a very select group of people that are inspired by it, and they do something they think is interesting with it, that you're moving culture when you do that. And that's, I think, a great argument for not curating. I do one more argument for not curating, an argument that I save for the end. One, because it's much better, and I think that's what you're supposed to do on YouTube, I heard. And two, it's like a sentence long. I mean, this argument takes nothing. A great argument for not curating at all in your artistic production is that oftentimes, hear me out, throwing shit at the wall really works. I mean, there's no, you know, brainy, there's no interesting way to kind of philosophize about this. If you look at great art throughout history, a lot of what they're doing is just throwing shit at the wall. You know, Picasso had tens of thousands of paintings. Ellsworth Kelly in upstate New York, he has literally a giant warehouse full of paintings. You can maybe name a painting or two from these artists, maybe 10 if you're really into them. You can't name all of them. Because to develop through the arts, you gotta just throw shit at the wall a bunch. You gotta just try whatever. And then, you know, out of that, you get something new that's brilliant. And then, you know, that's how you keep evolving. You keep doing. You just breathe art until it comes out how you want it to, or in a new, interesting way that appeals to people. That's also a really great argument for not curating. Typically, and once again, this is not a steadfast rule, I don't do steadfast rules. This is not a steadfast rule. But if you look at a lot of the most prolific artists throughout history, it's very rare that they would sit and work on one thing for a month to try and perfect a painting. Typically, they're fast. Typically, they're very like, just get this out, get that out, get this out. Not because it's by design, but that's just how they work, right? When you work like that, you're just gonna keep making things. So because of that, I am motivated to say that's a pretty solid argument for not curating. Like, and this is something that if you are, I think there's huge merits to being a perfectionist. I think there's huge merits to not being a perfectionist. I sit on the not perfectionist side of that. That's how I can make shit like this and put it out on the internet, right? This terrible painting that we have in front of us. However, I do think that if you are not a perfectionist, right, that is often something that, like, because now we see so many finished products on the internet, being not a perfectionist is something that, like, kind of sucks nowadays. Like, if you're somebody that's just throwing shit out all the time, you have a sketchbook full of unfinished sketches, I get why, like, you're looking at the beautiful thing, getting 1 million views on Instagram, and you're like, man, I'm never gonna be that, I suck. Listen, you're good. Like, you don't have to worry at all. Being not a perfectionist kind of rocks, just for, like, developing. Will you ever get that 1 million likes on Instagram? Hey, hell if I know, I haven't. But kind of rocks as far as just developing something and going in mass, you know? I'm gonna use myself as an example, not to toot my own horn here, but, like, I think that by just proxy and me being very okay with making a shitty painting and moving on, it's how I've been able to get to, like, just making stuff that looks very different from at the beginning of the year. I'm not saying I've gotten better. I think actually I'd probably improve in skill more if I took time to perfect my paintings, or to try to at least perfect them. I'm not saying they'd ever be perfect, but I don't think I would have been able to get as many ideas off and develop into a place where, like, you know, I can have an idea and it'd be like, that's fun, let's just go try that out, you know? And I think that there's a lot of merit to that too. Perfectionists are usually way more skilled. As a non-perfectionist, talking to other non-perfectionists right now, perfectionists that are way more skilled than us. They're way better than us. They have more sex, they get more women, they have a better job. We're chill, we're good though. Hey, Lock in. We're good, man. No, that's all I got for you today. This is the painting. I think this is kind of sick. Like, I really like something about this. I don't know. I think, like, I really hated the drip that came from this horn at the beginning. But I think that, like, having it kind of fuck up at the beginning here really, like, let me just be like, okay, I don't care how this comes out anymore. And I think I got a good amount of fluidity out of that. Yeah. Hell yeah, man. I like this. I like this painting a lot. Yeah, go check us out on the TikTok and the Instagram. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This is Paint Talk episode 336. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.